let's bring in our co-hosts, holding over from the first half of an hour where they learned that they don't speak Italian and they have nothing in common with Italians. The Admiral and former president of the Berkeley County Commission. He's got his own institute, Mr. Bill Stubblefield.
Well, I can try to speak Italian if you want.
Go right ahead, sir.
No, we'll pass.
Don't say Chef Boyardee to me. Don't.
That's how I recognize Italian food.
Don't do it. Don't cross that bridge. Badger, Delegate Michael Haidt, also known as the Sarge.
Big government.
Big government, Republican, yeah.
Big treasurer.
Good morning.
And you took that surprisingly well, Mike.
Well, touche. That was a good comeback.
Yeah, and also let's say good morning to the longest tenured member of our crew, former tax commissioner of the state of West Virginia, St. Louis Cardinals fan, Mr. Michael Carl.
Go Cards.
I'm looking at the standings here, Mike. The Cards are in second place, 5.5 games behind the Brewers with a record of 40-33. While the Buccos are 38-37 in fourth place, 8.5 games back of the Brewers and 3 games back of the Cardinals.
Yeah, we lost yesterday, but so did the Brewers. So we didn't lose ground.
Didn't lose ground. You treaded water. Also, let's say good morning to Vietnam War veteran, 26-year member of the House of Delegates, and once upon a time Deputy Revenue Secretary of the state of West Virginia, Mr. John Doyle.
Good morning, everybody.
Via conference call, attorney at law Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti. His name ends in a vowel. Joe, good morning.
Proudly ends in a vowel. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
Where are you, in Georgia this morning?
I am in Georgia, yes.
All right, very good. While we have the opportunity, happy Father's Day to everybody here on the panel and at home and whatever. I know we're having issues with TV 10's volume this morning, and then I see up there the picture froze too. So, but we are fine on the radio and our Facebook feed as well, the live stream on Facebook. So you can watch the same TV program on the Facebook live stream. If you haven't done it before, just go to Facebook and then put in TV 10 WRNR Martinsburg, search for that, and you just kind of click on the feed that'll come up, and you'll be able to enter the commenting community and all that stuff, and any identity that you'd like to have.
You can be anybody.
You want to be. Pick and choose, and don't just be one of them. Be a family of people. Yeah, take anybody you want. With issue number 1, our leadoff hitter, Mr. Ferretti.
Thank you, Rob. We're familiar with the saying that a lie is halfway around the world before the truth gets out of bed. And I think that saying is applicable to our immigration system and the efforts of the current administration to enforce immigration law. A lot of truth is now becoming evident regarding those efforts. And my thesis this morning is that the immigration efforts, the enforcement efforts of the Trump administration will prove to be perhaps one of the biggest boondoggles and waste of resources that we have had in current times. And let me give you an example of this. Recall back in January of this year, Moore Capito, who is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of West Virginia, had a press conference and issued a press release regarding Operation, make sure I get this term right. It was called Operation Country Roads. And remember that we discussed on this show some arrests that had taken place down on the West Virginia Turnpike in Interstate 77, where it enters into West Virginia, Interstate 64. And recall that I, on this show, talked about the fact that some of the people being arrested were simply contractors who were on their way to work. Some of these people were actually business owners, small contractors involved in the residential construction trades and whatnot. But at the time, Moore Capito in his press conference said, and I'm going to quote this because I want to get this accurate, that there were 650 arrests of illegal immigrants, many with, quote, serious criminal histories, including child sex abuse, drug possession, and child endangerment. Well, in the ensuing months, a project was undertaken by the West Virginia American Civil Liberties Union, and it was called their Deportation Data Project. What they did was they FOIA'd the arrest records of these 650 immigrants who had been detained, arrested, and taken to detention centers by the federal law enforcement officials, the ICE officials, in conjunction with local West Virginia law enforcement, because West Virginia had entered into that joint operation to enforce immigration laws, and they had done it, according to them, very proudly. Well, now that this data has been analyzed, it wasn't 650 arrests. It was really only 593. Not one of these people arrested had any prior arrests or convictions for sexual assault or crimes against children. Just 2 of the 593 arrested had drug offenses, and both of those offenses were misdemeanors. 305 of the 593 arrested had no criminal history whatsoever, and only 42 had an actual criminal conviction, which amounts to about 8% of all people who were arrested and detained by ICE and West Virginia law enforcement. Moore Capito was not accurate in his representation of the results of these efforts in terms of immigration enforcement. And I think this is a theme that's going to continue throughout as further study is taking place about these immigration efforts. There has been a constant overselling of this effort. There's been a constant drumbeat about the successes of these arrests and detentions. And I think there's been a concealing of not only the results of these arrests, but also the operation of the detention centers themselves, the conditions of those centers, the private contractors who are reaping federal dollars in getting contracts to run these detention centers. This is going to be, in my opinion, based upon what I'm reading and a lot of the studies that are coming out, this is going to be, as I called it, a real boondoggle for the American public to swallow. And let me give you some examples about nationwide what's going on, which in microcosm I just discussed is happening in West Virginia. We have over 60,000 people currently in detention in this country. A Syracuse study, which just came out a few weeks ago, indicate that over 70% of those people detained have no criminal history. Of those people with any kind of criminal history, 17%, just 17% have prior convictions. And 64% of those people with prior convictions, those are misdemeanors. Remember, this program was sold as we're going to get the worst of the worst off of our streets. We're not doing that. We're getting people who are simply here as a matter of either overstaying their visa or they perhaps they've even crossed illegally. But in times past, that was a civil procedure to deal with their status in this country. It wasn't a criminal procedure resulting in detention, and in some cases prolonged detention while they await their due process. The American Immigration Council indicates that only 2% of all people detained right now are suspected gang members, and 0.4% are suspected terrorists. So who are these people we're getting off our streets? I think that could be fairly asked. The other aspect of this, which is going to be disclosed through various studies that are now coming out, is that there's a whopping amount of your money and my money being spent on these efforts. And I think in a very frivolous way. The feds have purchased 11 large warehouses nationwide at an expense of over $1 billion. In fact, one of them is just up the road there in Hagerstown. One of them is just down the road from me in Social Circle, Georgia. What's happening now is because of local resistance to the operation of these detention centers, the feds are now having to put these purchased buildings back on the market at a great loss. In fact, of over $1.1 billion spent on these 11 facilities, a majority of them are coming back up for sale at prices that are 50% less than the purchase price paid with federal tax dollars. But this money, as we know, is a mere pittance to what Congress has authorized to ICE and Homeland Security. Remember that the big, beautiful bill authorized $78 billion of your money and my money to go to these efforts. And what we also are seeing is that private contractors are getting these contracts from the feds to operate these detention centers. And the notorious situation down in El Paso, Texas, where a contractor was given what amounted to a no-bid contract to run that facility. This contractor's previous, the largest previous contract it had with the federal government was for $16 million. The contract it got to run El Paso was $1.3 billion, 100 times more than it had ever received before from the federal government in any contracted situation. And this company had no active website and no experience whatsoever working within the confines of the immigration system in this country. Yet it ran that facility in El Paso to the point where lawsuits had to be filed because of the conditions that the detainees were subjected to. So, look, folks, I'm just scratching the surface here of what is coming to light regarding the immigration efforts by your and my federal government. And what I think we're going to find is that this is going to be a significant misallocation of resources. There's going to be evidence of graft, corruption, and really poor, perhaps unconstitutional treatment of many of these people being detained. In the end, I think this is going to be a sad story on par with the internment of the Japanese in the 1940s in response to World War II. I think it will be that kind of stain on this country. So my thesis and my question this morning is, do you feel the same regarding this administration's efforts to enforce our immigration laws? Do you think that it was justified? Do you think their efforts are appropriate? Or do you think that this is going to be so misguided and so mismanaged that it will become eventually, historically, a stain on this country?
John Doyle.
Joe, I agree. And when you mentioned the internment of the Japanese Americans, these many of them American citizens in World War II, it also reminded me when you were talking of my experience in Vietnam, where we got to the point where we had gotten there by the time I got to Vietnam in 1969. The war progress was being chronicled by what they called body count. The word was, if you killed more of the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, the farther you were on to victory. First of all, that is not necessary. That's rarely a mark of success in war. But what it also did is encouraged some commanders to tell their troops, kill anybody, and we'll count it as a body. And they were counted as bodies. A number of the people who were killed by American soldiers in Vietnam were not combatants. And I'm not blaming the soldiers who did it. They did it under orders, probably weren't aware that those orders were unlawful. Maybe even the commanders who gave them didn't realize it. It came down from above. And it just doesn't work. I mean, I think the American people want any immigrant who has committed a serious crime prosecuted for that crime and deported. But at the same time, the majority of the American people don't want just a sweep that grabs up everybody and sends them all out. They're willing to accept that if somebody came here illegally but hasn't committed a crime, that the person should be allowed to get legal and stay. So, Joe, I agree with you.
Mr. There I am, Mr. Carl.
I can't say I couldn't be more impressed by the advocacy of both the our friend on the phone and what we just heard from Doyle. It's impressive as advocacy, but it proves to me how desperate the Democrats are to deny the disaster that their party allowed when they had the open border during the Biden administration. It is a very effective presentation we just heard. It says a lot about the advocacy skills, but not about the substantive values of what we just heard. The absolute truth is, even the New York Times acknowledges, and all the liberal media, general media acknowledge the unbelievable wide open border disaster that happened during the Biden administration.
Can't both be true, though, Mike, that the Biden border policy was a disaster, but Trump's response to it has been a financial boondoggle?
No. I mean, in theory it could be true, but I don't agree it's true at all.
Despite the facts that Joe laid out?
Give me a break.
Did Joe make those? Joe, did you make those numbers up?
Oh no, they are well sourced.
Yeah. Give me the sources.
You're not going to take the time to look at those sources if he gives them to you.
I will if he gives them.
You're not going to.
Sure I will.
No, you won't.
Not on the air here.
No. It'll take some time.
Oh, and by the way,
because it was a very effective, argument that he made. But it's totally wrong in terms of major public policy agenda.
What did you want to say, John?
By the way, I do acknowledge the disaster that Biden created on the border. We need to fix a problem here and now.
Mr. Stubblefield.
I think we need to separate these two as separate issues altogether. And you alluded to it, Rob. One is the border, and I applaud what Trump has done with closing down the border. The second thing is the approach of ICE and the enforcement of removing these. Joe mentioned akin to the internment of the Japanese. I don't think that's the right one, because the Japanese were just interned. They were not deported in mass like we had a lot of other folks, and deported to countries and these prisons in Colombia. So there was a stepped up, a ratchet up of the difficulties of some of these immigrants facing as opposed to the Japanese. I think it's a more likely comparison is the darkest days of Reconstruction, where due process was very frequently ignored or violated. I think that there is a pushback, American people, with what we've seen with the enforcement, ICE, as epitomized by ICE. And we saw this after Minneapolis, where there's an image of Boveen, the director of the ICE, wearing around what appeared to be a Nazi type of overcoat. And so there was a pushback at the time. Trump has backed off substantially on the role that ICE is doing, has taken. And I think it's much more reasonable now than what it was in the early days. But in the incident that Joe was describing was in the early days of the ICE enforcement. I think there's a real pushback, and it's shown in the polls. The American people are disgusted with what they've seen. The polls indicate this. We are above this. We are better than what we saw in the darkest days of the ICE enforcement. That showed that showed very little compassion, very little concern for the others. It was the darkest of the dark days, and I would say it was the dark days compared to Reconstruction.
Yeah, FDR's Executive Order 9066 It wasn't about taking Japanese who crossed the border illegally. They were taking American citizens who were of Japanese descent out of their homes and moving them into camps. Michael
but they
Haidt.
stayed in the camp. That's as far as it went.
Yeah, Michael Haidt.
Yeah, I think Barack Obama put it very succinctly. Elections have consequences, and Donald Trump was elected largely on the border issue, on immigration. And when he ran on, I'm going to close down the border and I am going to deport people who are here illegally. And he won the election, and he has done just that. He proved that it was very easy, despite what Biden said, to shut down the border, and he has done that. We don't have the mass immigration across the border that we had back then. And now he is just deporting those who are here illegally. And he never said that I am just going to deport those who have committed crimes. What he said was many of those who have come across the border, many of those who are here illegally have committed serious crimes. But that doesn't mean those are the only ones that get deported. If you are here illegally, you should be deported. I don't care whether you've committed a crime or not. You have committed a crime by being here illegally. I cannot go to France and live in France and get a job and live there indefinitely without the French government coming sooner or later and saying, you are here illegally. You are not a citizen of this country, and we are going to deport you. That happens all around the world. Every country has its immigration policies. Every country has its deportations. So I don't know why we should be any different. I think it is terrible to liken this to the Japanese internment camps for the reasons that you've set forth. We took Americans with Japanese descent and put them in internment camps. They never should have been there. They were Americans. What we are doing now is not Americans. They are here illegally. They are from another country. They're being deported because they're not Americans. So to liken that to the Japanese internment camps or even Vietnam or Reconstruction is a bad analogy. All around. This is what Donald Trump was elected to do. Now, some of it may look painful. I agree. Some of the things ICE has done, maybe they have gone a step too far. I get it. But that is their job. They are immigration and customs enforcement. These people, many of them, have broken the law just by being here. It is the job of ICE to enforce our laws. If you don't like our laws, then change the laws. Don't bitch and complain about the enforcement agency that is just doing their job.
Joe, the great fact fabricator Ferretti, you're back for the final minute.
Well, for Mike Carl, I cited a study out of the Syracuse University. The information about West Virginia's arrests were from the West Virginia ACLU. You can look those studies up. Mike Haidt, I mean, look, what you say makes a lot of sense, and on the surface sounds great. But when the cure is, in some cases, worse than the illness, I think we have cause to question this. Look at the money. Nobody's discussing the money that's being wasted. A facility in Salt Lake City purchased for $50 million over the appraised value to try to operate a detention center. The amount of money that's being wasted here should shock all of us, given the situation with our government and taxation and all the issues that we have with the budget.
But those are separate issues. That doesn't mean that we should stop enforcing. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be deporting. I'll agree with you. If we're wasting money, we need to get to the bottom of that, but that's a totally separate issue.
And the Democrats never waste money.
Mike, if this situation was righteous, why is it constantly being oversold?
Hey, we got to stop here, Joe. I'm sorry.
Think it's necessary?
Good start to the show. This is Talk Radio, WNR Martinsburg and TV 10. Bill, you're on the clock next. Let's go around the room and reintroduce our Friday 5 panel. In studio here, he is the Badges, the Sarge as well, Michael Haidt.
Good morning. Good to be here.
He is the longest tenured member of our crew, Mr. Michael Carl, attorney at law.
Good morning.
Former tax commissioner of the state of West Virginia, avid Cardinals fan. 26-year member of the House of Delegates, Vietnam War veteran, former Deputy Revenue Secretary of the state, Mr. John Doyle.
Good morning, everybody.
You heard previously from attorney at law Joe Ferretti. And now
Good
with
morning.
issue number 2, the Admiral Bill Stubblefield.
Rob, let's go with the issue at hand as far as not only in West Virginia, but the country and the nation as a whole, or the international. And that's the memorandum of agreement between the U.S. and Iran. And I'm just emphasizing just the U.S. and Iran because Israel is not part of it, nor like we had in 2015, 700 to 800 other countries, including Russia and China. They're not part of it. This is strictly the U.S. and Iran. The president has been making a point this is a great win for the U.S. A lot of the analysts disagree with that. A lot of his own party disagrees with that. I'm not going to go through all the points for the safety, for the benefit of time, because it's been so well developed and discussed in the last 3 or 4 days. My question to my colleagues is, Trump is spinning this as a great victory for the U.S. Others are saying actually it's a victory that for Iran. Iran gained a lot more than the U.S. What is the opinion of my colleagues? Who won with this MOA?
Mr. Carl, lead us off.
Well, I think part of the problem, or why there's an issue that you just described, is because of Trump's rhetoric. But substantively, I think what Trump has done needed to be done, but it's not over. And I think the details and the actual implementation of the final, resolution is still playing out. And Trump will, because of his style, will brag, but on the merits, the deal that was made before him, and clearly failed. Now we're in the middle of this new initiative, which I supported generally, but the details are still unclear and not finalized.
Mr. Doyle.
The devil is indeed in the details. President Trump said that Iran was going to surrender unconditionally. There are 14 conditions in this, even if it is a surrender, and I don't think it's a surrender. At the moment, it's a stalemate. We have bombed the dickens out of them, but we have not destroyed them. They still have a pretty substantial missile capacity, drone capacity. And in fact, Trump himself said, if they dishonor any of the conditions that are going to be in here, we're going to start bombing again. So that's an acknowledgement that we haven't won yet. So I agree with Mike Carl that this is not over yet, but at the moment, the bottom line is Iran it looks to be ahead, because first of all, the language in which they say we're not going to have a nuclear weapon is weaker than the language in the JCPOA, the one that Obama had them sign. In that one, they said we will never have a nuclear weapon. The language now says we're not going to have one now. And they still apparently are going to control the Strait of Hormuz along with Oman. And this will be a great loss for the freedom of commerce worldwide. The United States of America has always stood for free commerce on the seas. And we've gone to war in the past to protect free commerce on the seas. And apparently we're giving it away, because before we started this war, there was free commerce through the Strait of Hormuz, and there will not be free commerce now. Iran said they can't charge tolls, but it says they can charge fees. What's the difference between a fee and a toll?
Badger.
Is this being recorded?
It is. It's just not being heard on TV 10 where there's no volume.
Okay. You're not going to hear this very often, but John Doyle is spot on. You're not going to hear it from me anyway. This is a very, in my opinion, disappointing end to this war. And I was very in favor of the actions taken initially, but I think what we've done at this point is just ceased hostilities and given this regime the ability to regroup. And we have just kicked this can down the road. We will have to deal with this we'll have to deal with this indefinitely at this point, because I don't know that there's another president that is going to come along that's going to have the cojones to go in and forcefully do anything with Iran like Donald Trump did. Why he stopped short, I have no idea. I think that we should have kept on going until there was regime change. There was some kind of and John's right. You cannot have fees, tolls, whatever the heck you want to call them, in the Strait of Hormuz. That should never happen anywhere in the world, and we should not have allowed it to happen here. And this, in my opinion, is a failure.
Mr. Ferretti.
Well, I certainly echo that, Mike Height, and I think Mike Carl's correct that there's a lot of work that is yet to be done. So who knows how this is going to ultimately turn out. But what we know now, it does not look good for the United States. We essentially cut a deal to stop the blockade, and in return, they allow shipping to go through the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days, and they get financial and sanctions relief. And to me, that's the biggest issue. Because if this country, and I'm talking about Iran, is ever going to be reformed, and there's ever going to be real regime change, it's going to come due to domestic politics, domestic pressure. And the sanctions relief that is being granted to Iran immediately, not if they behave, not if they perform well, but immediately under this memorandum of understanding, is going to relieve that domestic pressure. They are now going to be a part of the international banking system, which up until this point in time, they were not. That was a great hindrance to their economy. They are now going to get money, perhaps technically not from the United States, but from some of our partners in the Middle East. So they're going to have a chance to reconstitute this government in ways that is going to continue to hold the people of Iran under their thumb. They are not going to be in a situation where they have to reform. In fact, there's predictions that they're going to be even more hardlined than they were before, to the detriment of the Middle East and this country and all we put into this effort. So this looks bad. U.S. senators are speaking out about it, how bad it looks. And unless we pull a rabbit out of the hat going forward, with Iran still holding a lot of the cards, I suspect we're going to have some real problems in terms of dealing with them, both in the short term and long term.
Back to you, Bill.
Yeah.
Before you go, real quick, I just want to say that I think the Ukraine war revealed the limitations of the Russian army, the Russian military. And I think this war has revealed the limitations of our own military. And it's not as powerful as we thought it was, because Iran should have been easy to take on and destroy.
Well, if I can throw it, I do think that our military has demonstrated its very great strength. I will disagree with you there, Mike. The problem is you can't bomb somebody into submission. If you're going to defeat your opponent, you have to be willing to send in ground troops and take over the place. And I think the reason Trump decided not to go in is very partly that his advisors told him, you're going to need 300,000 American soldiers on the ground if we're going to pull this off. And he said, the American people are not going to accept that. Also, I think one of the reasons that he decided to stop was that the world is about 4 weeks away from being out of oil. And that would have caused a worldwide depression. I do think it was a sensible choice on President Trump's part. So anyway, and I also, one of the things I also mentioned, if we allow Iran and Oman to control the Strait of Hormuz. This lays the precedent. For example, Spain, Britain, and Morocco all of a sudden control the Strait of Gibraltar.
Yep.
You know, straits all over the world, countries near them going to say, we're in charge now. It's just terrible.
I agree.
Now back to you, Bill.
Yeah, everybody looks ahead, say that it's things have to be decided. That's exactly right. But let's look back at Gaza. There were a 3-step plan. The step 1 was the easy plan. Where have we gone in the last year and a half, 2 years? We've not progressed past step 1. We have not addressed step 2 and step 3. It took us several weeks to get this memorandum of agreement. Everybody says we're kicking the can down the road. What realism do we have? Is there any realistic thinking that we can achieve meaningful agreement in the next 2 months? Not on items such as nuclear weapons, the disposal of nuclear weapons. They've taken a lot of things off the table. They've taken the proxy country role of terrorism. That's off the table. They've taken the ballistic missiles. That's off the table. They've the disposal of getting the nuclear dust, that's basically off the table. So everything of meaningful consequence has been taken off the table, and I still question whether it'll have anything to do to get a meaningful agreement in the next 2 months. I don't see how this can be interpreted any way rather than a slam dunk for Iran, unfortunately.
I think Netanyahu talked Trump and his guys into this one. And you can see Netanyahu still wants to continue it.
That's right.
He wanted the elimination of Iran. And at the time, maybe we were a little drunk off of Venezuela and thought this would be pretty easy. And it's easy to drop bombs. But as John Doyle said, if you're going to take over a country, you got to do it with ground forces. And there is no will on behalf of the American people to have that happen. Mr. Haidt, issue number 3.
All right, I'm gonna touch on a subject that we've talked about before, and that has to do with the brain drain here in West Virginia, the loss of young talent as they come out of college, and we've touched on this before, but I think we've touched on it as a bunch of old men sitting around talking about why young people leave the state. So,
Connor, get your ears on. We need a 20-year-old here.
No way, Mike.
So, I don't know if we still fully understand it. This weekend at Interims, we had in health, we had a couple of doctors come in and present along with the vice president of Vandalia Health. And they were talking about OBGYNs and the recruitment of OBGYNs.
Well, here's something that all of us guys know about. Go ahead.
Well, sure. Into West Virginia. And they said, when they were recruiting, and they were recruiting for the Charleston, Greenbrier area, that corridor, they said we sent out, we had 20 individuals apply. We sent out invitations for interviews to 19 of them. We interviewed them. We made 19 offers of those individuals. We had 0 candidates say yes. And so one of the things they said it didn't have anything to do with money, because they were well within the range of everyone around us. What they found out when they went back and asked a lot of those individuals is it was a lifestyle choice, that they chose to go to places, especially with OBGYN, where there were a lot of those people in the field. So when they had to go to the hospital, that there were 6 or 7 OBGYNs that were practicing in that hospital. So when they were on call on weekends, they were on a 7 or 8 person rotation, rather than in West Virginia where they're going to be on a 2 or 3 person rotation. And it was a quality of life issue. It had nothing to do with actually living in West Virginia. It had to do with, I think, young professionals today are choosing their lifestyle over money and over careers. And I think they hold the cards more than they did in the past. I also went and asked my son, who is a young professional who moved out of West Virginia, and talked to him about why. What was it about West Virginia? He and his wife is from Pennsylvania, southern Pennsylvania, and they both moved to the Raleigh-Durham area, and asked him why. What was it? His answers were, he said it was momentum over friction. He says the momentum was career growth. How do I get? I wasn't looking for a job. And he says, I could have gotten a job in West Virginia. I chose to, and my wife chose to go to an area where there was a density of career opportunities. If this job didn't work out, there was another one right around the corner. So there are these hubs within the country of certain things, whether it be biomedical, whether it be tech, whether it be computer science. There are hubs. Raleigh-Durham happens to be one of those areas. I can find any number, he said, I can find any number of jobs in my profession in the Raleigh-Durham area. I could have stayed in West Virginia and had one choice, maybe two choices, and there was no upward mobility. He said the second thing was retail and life density. He talked about density a lot. It wasn't just about, can I find a nice retail place to go buy stuff from, or a nice place to go eat, but the density of, I can find several places to shop. I can find several places to go eat without making it a 2-hour round trip to another state in order to get the choices that I would like to get. He also mentioned geography and climate. There's nothing we can do in West Virginia about that. We are what we are. So we're going to have to go to other areas. The interesting thing is he didn't mention education. He didn't mention health care. He didn't mention child care. He says he thinks many young professionals are deciding that their career is first, having a family, settling down, those types of things are secondary. And if I can find that density of career positions, then I'll look for the education things after the fact. I'll look for the healthcare things after the fact, after I have that upward mobility and the lifestyle that I think an area brings to us. So I guess my question to the panel is, do you agree with this assessment, and how do we get to the point where we are retaining and bringing in young professionals in the state of West Virginia?
All right, 1 minute or less on the responses. Michael Carl.
Well, let me start with saying that I was fortunate enough to, when I finished law school, to have opportunities to work in major urban law firms, but I chose to come back to West Virginia. But at the same time, of my 3 children, only one of the 3 even went to college in West Virginia, and he's the only one that's still here working at West Virginia University. But the final point I would make is that West Virginia is not a monolith. The Eastern Panhandle, and some extent Morgantown, are okay places, and have opportunities and can attract and have attracted additional people.
Mr. Stubblefield, 1 minute or less.
Yeah, fortunately, we're not number one in this. South Dakota, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Louisiana lead us in brain drain. And Mike Height, you've given a lot of reasons. I'm not in a position to really refute or rebut that. I do think this anecdotal that the emphasis that recently we've had on social issues as opposed to economic issues. Unfortunately, I think that's changing in the last session or so, but it was not a few years ago. Emphasizing social issues as opposed to economic issues has some impact.
Mr. Doyle.
If somebody wants to live in the city, they're not going to want to come to West Virginia. We are going to lose those people. There are a number of other states, and I'll use North Carolina like Mike did. Western North Carolina, the rural areas of Western North Carolina are losing people to places like Raleigh-Durham. I strongly recommend an interview in this morning's Charleston Gazette Mail with Steve Roberts, the executive director of the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce. He talks about a number of things like this, so I strongly recommend that.
Been a little while since we've had Steve on the show. Thank you for the tip. I'll reach out to him. Mr. Ferretti.
Yeah, John, I read that article, and it's enlightening to hear what Roberts has to say. Mike, I much like you, I've talked to my kids. All three are professionals and all chose to leave West Virginia for many of the reasons you spoke of. The generation today are putting off marriage. They're putting off having children. They are really focused on their careers, and the upward mobility that they seek is not going to be found in West Virginia. I just got done vacationing in Maine for a week, and Maine is a lot like West Virginia. You have to drive a long way to find a good restaurant, to get health care, to be in an urban setting. And that's just not going to change. That's just part of what you have to accept if you're a West Virginian. There's some things we can do. I think Bill's correct. My girls, three of them, all cite some of the social issues as making them a little uncomfortable as a female in West Virginia. But by and large, it's the career focus and the fact that West Virginia just doesn't have the opportunities that other states offer.
Badger, back to you. You got a minute to close it up?
Yeah, one of the things he didn't mention, and I even brought it up, was the social issues. He said that's just not a factor. He says, there's social issues wherever you go. He says that wasn't a concern with him or some of the young professionals that he talks to. He did mention, he says, it looked a couple of years ago like West Virginia was going to push into the aviation and aeronautics sector. He says it looked like you were going to utilize your regional airports and you are going to bring a hub of aeronautics to West Virginia, which would have brought in young professionals in those fields. And he said, I thought that was a good idea. He said, you should have kept pushing with that. He says, why you're not, why you've backed off, I have no idea. I think Marshall and Brad Smith are still pushing that direction, and I think the House of Delegates is pushing in that direction, but we need full state approval of that and keep pushing if we want to attract those professionals.
All right, good stuff. We got the final leg of the marathon coming up here with Mr. Doyle and then Mr. Carl when we return after these. Van Morrison playing us in with Real Real Gone. And happy Juneteenth to everybody. If you have the day off, good for you. And also summer arrives at 4:24 a.m. on Sunday morning. So hope you'll join me, guys, around the table at 4:24 a.m. in celebrating summer. I'll be calling all of you, so make sure your phones are on.
Longest day of the year.
You're out of your blooming mind.
As we get these guys revived, it seems, that brought them all to attention right away, that thought of a 4:24 wake-up call. You haven't probably had that since Vietnam, John.
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Because when I got back from Vietnam, I left the Army that day.
And you hit 46 states, did you say?
Yeah.
Which ones did you miss?
A year. I've not been to Hawaii. I have not been to Wyoming. I've never been in Wyoming. I don't know how I missed that, but at any rate, I can't remember which were the two that I missed that time. I caught them not too long after that. But
okay,
yeah.
You hit Alaska?
Yeah, I hit Alaska on my way to Vietnam. Yeah. So I count that. I was on the ground for 3 hours at the airport. I never left the airport.
Hawaii's worth the trip.
I'm sure. Is Wyoming?
I've never been to Wyoming.
Definitely so. Yeah, Wyoming's a very unique.
Okay.
Is that where you were chased by a grizzly there?
Yeah, I was chased by a grizzly in Wyoming.
Cold country.
Yeah.
Apparently you got away.
But it was a long night, John. It was a long night. Yeah.
It was tracking you, I think you were telling me before,
It was tracking
right?
me, yeah. And it's a female grizzly. And, it was kind of frightening.
Ooh, wow.
Well, maybe she thought you were attractive.
I'm not sure she's tracking me or my date.
I see. Our co-hosts on the day here via telephone, Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti. Joe, welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good to have you. The Badger, Michael Height.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Longest tenured member of our crew, Michael Carl.
Good morning.
The Admiral, Bill Stubblefield.
The grizzly and all?
Grizzly. Maybe take those stakes out of your pocket next time you go to Yellowstone.
So we can really say now, I did not know that, we can really say now he is a grizzled veteran.
I am a grizzled, certainly a veteran.
He's a survivor. And with issue number 4, Vietnam War veteran Mr. John Doyle.
Thank you. And Joe Ferretti will probably want to pitch in on this one. I'm sure he knows about it, and he may know more about it than I do. Yesterday, the Georgia legislature, having been called into special session by Governor Brian Kemp, I think I got his first name right, to redistrict their congressional districts for 2028, not 2026. The governor said it's too late to do it for 26, but we're going to do it for 28. So these new districts would be in place in 28 and in 30, and then the regular redistricting would occur in 2031 for the 2032 election. The Georgia legislature decided to not take it up, and they told the governor, well, we don't have the votes. This piggybacking, a couple of weeks ago, the same thing happened in South Carolina, where the governor called them in to redistrict, and the state Senate said, sorry, we don't have the votes. We're not doing it. I suggest that a very important reason for the reluctance of both of these states to do what President Trump wanted and do mid-decade redistricting is the realization of two things. One, when you redistrict, you can't be absolutely certain how this new district is going to behave. If you take a district that is 30 points toward your party and you trim it down to 15 points in favor of your party in order to take a district away from the opposite party, you run the risk that a wave election may give that original district to the opposite party. Actually, I think we'd be better off if we have more competitive districts in states around the country. But that's an aside. But the other thing going on is the realization by many state legislators, Republican state legislators in these states, is that this whole mid-decade redistricting, which President Trump inspired, beginning in Texas, is causing African Americans and other minorities to get really up in arms, and they see an improved turnout on the part of particularly African Americans in the midterm elections, but also Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, and some other minorities. That African Americans, of course, being the largest of the minorities in population. I think some of those legislators said, we may be sticking our fist in a hornet's nest if we try this. So I throw it out to my colleagues for their views on this.
All right, Joe, John referenced you first, so why don't you lead off?
Well, John Doyle, you're correct. That is exactly what happened in the Georgia legislature yesterday. And this is what happens when you live in a purple state, which has unfortunately become lost on many West Virginians. Sometimes bad ideas go away because of political pressures. And redistricting at this stage in the game in Georgia was seen as a bad idea by a lot of Republicans who hold office and by some of the Republicans who are running for office because of the backlash that they have seen in other states really under the guise of turnout and political support and political enthusiasm for the party that is opposing the redistricting. That happened in Texas, that happened in South Carolina, and it certainly happened in Georgia. We have two really significant races in Georgia. Our governorship is up for election, and it's going to be a tough battle between Keisha Lance Bottoms, who was the former mayor of Atlanta, and the Republican on that, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name. The Republican is Rick Jackson, who's a billionaire Trump supporter. That's going to be a real battle. And then our U.S. Senate seat, John Ossoff, who currently holds the seat and is a real political athlete, is up against Mike Collins, who is a congressman representing a district here in Georgia, notorious for putting his foot in his mouth in many cases. That's going to be a real battle. And the fear was that there was going to be such a backlash that both the Republican candidates in those races were going to lose if they redistricted. So they backed off on it. And you can understand why, given how close things are in Georgia. Our legislature is under a lot of pressure down here because they sat on their hands and did nothing when the federal government came in and took away all our ballots from the last election. We haven't heard anything about what's happened with those ballots that were taken away, but the legislature let it happen. And to West Virginia's credit, they didn't let that happen. So this legislature was under a lot of pressure, and it was almost a foregone conclusion that despite pressure from the governor and from President Trump, they were not going to redistrict this time around. But watch this space. They're still in session, and there's some things they can still do regarding this upcoming election.
Mr. Badger.
Yeah, I have to agree. This constant redistricting has to stop. That one state redistricts and then another state wants to redistrict to counteract what the last state did. It's gotten to be ridiculous. We need to redistrict every 10 years after a census, and only then. And whoever's in power at that particular point, that's who gets to draw the lines. Now, to John's, comment about we need to have more competitive districts. John, you were in the majority at one time and helped with redistricting here in the state of West Virginia. Did you try to make things 50-50 when you were doing that? I don't think so. You gerrymandered it just like every party does.
Actually, that's not true, Mike. We gerrymandered, but we gerrymandered for incumbent protection only of both parties. It is fundamentally different from the way it was done this last time.
But you gerrymandered.
Well, yeah, and we should not have. I concede. We should not have.
Right, but I think that's the attitude of whoever's in charge. We're going to gerrymander to a degree. Now, you can fight against that gerrymandering. We've even had some people suggest, well, it needs to be nonpartisan. It's never going to be nonpartisan. I don't know how you put a group together that's nonpartisan to do redistricting. I don't even know how you would do that, because somebody would still complain when things didn't go their way that it was too many Democrats or too many Republicans. But we have to stop doing it mid-decade. It needs to happen after a census, and that's the only time. And the only way that's going to happen is if Congress gets involved and makes some kind of law like that. And then you're going to have the states saying, you're intruding upon the 10th Amendment and our ability to do this. We run our own elections. I don't know, but in my opinion, it has to stop.
Admiral.
Yeah, John, you posed a question by using two states as an example, South Carolina and Georgia. I think Joe Ferretti did a very nice job of describing of why the Georgia legislators backed off on it. They're very solid points. South Carolina, though, was for a different reason. And I think that was the loyalty to Claiborne. And he's been in office as a House Representative for many years, and it would have been a public slapdown if they had redistricted for that. So I give the Republicans credit. They honored one of their colleagues and Claiborne, and they did not go with that. So I think two different issues, and I can see a rationale for both.
Mr. Carl.
Well, certainly redistricting initially creates uncertainty. There's no question about that. But I will say, and this will really lead to my subject, the Supreme Court of the United States was right to eliminate the racial pattern or leader or incentive for the districting that was in place in various places.
I would like to see redistricting done on a geographical basis and only on a geographical basis. And whatever the voter registration is in that area is what it is.
Yes.
I think that you have a lot more in common geographically than you do by stretching a district out in strange shapes to try to make something work from a political party standpoint.
Right.
All right, on to, we go back to you for the final word first, John.
Actually, I was going to say, that is actually, it's still in effect, a court decision from, a lower court decision, which was never overturned by the Supreme Court from about 40 years ago, which says that districts have to be geographically compact. and they also have to have commonality of interest. And if you enforce that, I think you would get rid of these many of the odd shapes, and you would have more competitive districts. And to Mike, actually, a number of states have done nonpartisan redistricting, and it has worked. In fact, it worked pretty well in California before Governor Newsom said we got to undo it in order to match Texas. So
rank order voting would solve a lot of those
Ranked
questions.
choice.
Ranked choice voting, but that will never happen in West Virginia.
you haven't even gotten me on ranked choice voting yet.
You should, John.
You've been lectured. On to issue number 5, Mr. Carl.
Well, I want to bring up the following issue. The Democrats, there have been noises, I'm not attributing to any particular leader, but there have been noises from the Democrat side to increase the number of members of the U.S. Supreme Court, which they can do by statute, federal law, and then obviously to pack the court with their people. What do you think about that?
On the phone, Mr. Ferretti via video conference.
Well, I think that is so short-sighted, and I don't think it's going to happen. It's a pipe dream to think that we're going to change the laws to allow additional Supreme Court justices, and that the Democrats are then going to have the ability to name who they want for the Supreme Court, because right now it's always the party in power, it's the president who's elected, who gets to make the nomination, and that's not always going to be a Democratic president. So I whether it's 9, 15, or 25, to me, it's not going to matter. The Democrats have to start winning elections if they want to get their people on the Supreme Court. So bottom line is I just think that's a short-term solution to a problem that is not going to be solved by the way the Democrats want to. So I, for one, am not concerned that that's going to happen, or that that's a viable solution for what the Democrats see as a real problem on the Supreme Court.
The Democrats thought they had a problem. They should have convinced Ruth Bader Ginsburg to retire. Then they wouldn't be in the situation they're in with the Supreme Court. Mr. Haidt.
Yeah, I would agree. This is similar to the redistricting issue, that you can't just, when you're in power, change the dynamics of something, because as soon as the other party gets in power, they're going to either change it back or add to it or something so that they can pack the court their way. It just 9 justices. We've had 9 justices for some time now. It seems to work very well. I know it wasn't always 9, but we've gotten to 9. It seems to work. It seems to work well. And I would just leave it alone. Some things you just need to leave alone and stop trying to gain power, because it's always going to be short term when you do things like this.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Hey,
Good.
Hey, Rob.
Good, Joe.
Rob, I'm sorry, Bill. Let me interrupt. Somebody needs to send an application to Mike Carl to join the Democratic Party, because his singular focus on what ails the party, I believe, is an underlying desire to correct those problems. And so I think he would have a lot to contribute, and I think somebody needs to get him an application.
I agree.
If he'll listen to me, I'll join him.
Give him a really big contract.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Yeah, what is troubling is the level that the Supreme Court is viewed today. There's been a precipitous decline in approval just in the last 15, 20 years. For many years, it was held as the kind of the third rail that above petty politics. It's not viewed that anymore now. So that I think is unfortunate. There is a proposal, and I don't know. I only heard bits and pieces of it, that would increase the numbers, also couple in with a mandatory retirement at a certain age, blending these together so that every president on a 4-year cycle would have the opportunity to nominate one member of the Supreme Court. I'm not sure how it would work. On the surface, it does have some attractiveness, but again, I don't know enough about it to defend it. I will look into it more.
Mr. Doyle.
Yeah, I think packing the court is a dumb idea. And actually, most Democrats I talk with agree that it's a dumb idea. So it isn't going to happen. Bill is right. There have been ideas coming forth from the legal community that because we now have 13 judicial circuits, that we should have 13 people on the court. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but the idea is that each Supreme Court justice is assigned to oversee a judicial circuit. And when we had 9 judicial circuits, it made sense to have 9 members of the court. So that is one. I do think, however many members we have, that we should have term limits to the point where each president gets to appoint 1 member of the court every 2 years. So if we have 9 members of the Supreme Court, each one would serve an 18-year term. And at the end of the 18th year, whoever is president then could, in fact, reappoint that member of the court should the president wish to do so. But I do think Bill's right. The court has the image of the court now is one of being much more partisan than it used to be. And I do think we need to get out of that. And I think a system like that would restore the court's image as a neutral arbiter.
John, I've had that opinion since the Bork hearings. Going back as far as the Bork hearings.
And that was partisan. You're exactly right, Rob.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
yes.
You're right.
Yes.
To me, that was the end of the Supreme Court as a respected independent institution.
Yeah.
I regarded them as nothing more than a political...
I think what John was saying, what I was saying, there is more of a feeling today that it's a partisan than what it was before. There's always been some sense of partisan.
I'm happy to welcome all of you into my club. It's a big club, big tent, big club. Back to you, Mike, for the final thought.
Contrary to what we just heard about the trend of public thought, I couldn't be more happy and impressed and pleased and proud of the U.S. Supreme Court than today.
Because
that
your buddy
any surprise?
Clarence Thomas, your classmate Clarence Thomas.
Including my classmate, Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, but I think what is a reasonable question, I don't think packing the court's a reasonable proposition, but I think a more reasonable one is the ending of the life term. Yes. For a Supreme Court justice. I know that's the thought is it avoids the pressure of making decisions because you can't be removed. But why do we need a life term? Why can't it be a shorter term? I don't know what that number is.
And also expanding the court is different than packing the court. And as John alluded, as I mentioned, there can be mechanisms set up that every 2 years, every 4 years, every president be guaranteed at least 1 appointment.
Yeah, I don't know that I like that idea either. Maybe like a 9-year term.
That would eliminate the inherent and critical stability of the policy and the constitutional rulings of the law.
How, Mike?
Yeah, how?
By changing it every several years. That's why. That's the point of the permanent Supreme Court.
But they didn't put that in the Constitution. You can have term limits of the court without violating the Constitution.
There's some good principles that aren't worded in the Constitution. I agree.
The defense rests.
I thought he was the prosecution.
It depends on whether you mention Democrat or Republican to him. If you mention Joe Biden, it's prosecution. Yeah. All right, hey, get your final thoughts together, and we are back with those with 8 seconds apiece, leading off with Joe on the video conference after we take our final 2-minute break. Final thoughts, 8 seconds apiece. Joe, go.
You know, it occurred to me to get politics out of setting up these congressional districts, let AI do it.
Mr. Doyle.
Oh, Elon Musk, how much we love you.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Last couple of weeks, the West Virginia baseball team and their fans served the state well. It's well done.
Mr. Carl.
Go Cards.
Mr. Height.
Mother's Day is ranked as number 2 most celebrated holiday. Father's Day, number 9.
Top 10.
Coming up this week, right behind Halloween. So put on a costume and go buy your father a gift.
Dave Ramsey Show is next. This is Talk Radio, WRI Martinsburg and TV 10. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you in 70. Short hour.
Clock somewhere